I wanted to re-record the bit that runs over the opening theme where we say our name.
Okay.
I'm going to say I'm Tom Dickinson.
Uh-huh.
And then you can say that you're Lewis Midas.
Mm.
And then I'll say, and this is the Cloister Room. And then, I don't know, you could say something. What do you want to say?
So, like, let's see. So could I...
Oh, you could say a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Hang on. A podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Well, I mean, you could say that at the top when we get to it.
Well, yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to, like, write that down because I feel like in the heat of the moment, I'm going to forget.
Okay. It is a pretty heaty moment. This moment is very heated.
Okay.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Lewis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Before we dive into our discussion on Midnight, we have gotten some feedback from people about our discussion of Dalek.
Ooh, have we?
Oh, yes, we have.
Cool.
In fact, we've gotten a comment on thecloisterroom.com from Stephen from Radio Free Skaro, who wanted to explain what he meant when he said that Dalek was the most important Doctor Who story of all time.
Ah.
And I'm now going to read that aloud after I look it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably should have had that at the ready.
Well, whatever.
I made you read the last bit of feedback we did, so I figured it's my turn.
All right. That sounds fair, I guess.
The reason why Dalek is the most important Doctor Who story ever made? Because it took everything that the show used to be laughed at and mocked and made it completely terrifying. The Dalek plunger we all laughed at, it sucks people's faces off. Daleks can't climb stairs, now they can fly upstairs. Daleks are slow and you can easily hide from them, right? Now their midsection can swivel round to shoot at you. And one solitary Dalek can destroy an entire underground base, relying mostly on its wits and cunning, something that was never really portrayed as Dalek traits in the classic series. By showing that what were once considered a joke to be actually full of menace, Dalek not only returned the Daleks to respectability in the yes of fans. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be eyes. In the eyes of fans. Not the yes of fans. I don't think that's a thing.
Probably not.
In the eyes of fans, but also in the eyes of the average viewing public. And in doing so, it eliminated many other preconceptions of the show being cheap and silly. There's no more wobbly scenery jokes to be made here. Doctor Who was back, and it meant business, and it set the tone for the rest of the series to date.
Huh. That makes sense.
It makes sense. I was kind of hoping that at some point in there would be the word about, so I could say a boot and make fun of the fact that he's Canadian. But, yeah, it didn't happen.
Oh, well. You can keep hoping.
Yeah.
No, I actually really like that that analysis, and I think, I guess I'm missing out on all the sort of culture of how the classic series was viewed at the time. And I mean, I guess the Daleks were kind of silly, but, like, my first introduction to the Daleks would have been in this new series, so I always sort of viewed them as terrifying, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I guess when I went back to the classic series, I guess that sort of carried over, so I never really had that whole silliness sort of thing. Although I guess it is, now that I think about it, in some of the classic stories, I do sort of get that feel. But, at the same time, or at least I could understand where people would be coming from. But at the same time, I don't know. I thought they were pretty scary, at least at some moments in the classic series.
Yeah, but, and like you, I came to Doctor Who with the new series, but I have gotten the feeling that prior to 2005, in the eyes of most of the British public, Doctor Who was looked at as a bit of a joke, and so were the Daleks.
Okay.
I mean, especially during the latter years of the classic series and thereafter. Mm-hmm. Even though it did still have a humongous following, it's just it was sort of a humongous cult following.
Ah. I also found it very interesting that, like when you said the Doctor Who's more popular now than it ever was, and that sort of is in line with that, I guess. But yeah, no, I do see that.
We also got an email on this topic from a Dave Hingley. I'm guessing that's how his name is pronounced. Hingley, not Hingley or Hingley. Could be anything, really.
Yeah.
He sort of says that kind of thing, and then he goes on to say, it also set up the rewrite of Doctor Who canon by introducing the concept of the Time War. It gave the writers the option to pick and choose which parts of the canon without them having to be slavishly tied to the show continuity, and it opened the floodgates to allow for classic series monsters and aliens to make a return.
Ah. Yeah. Well, I do seem to recall us mentioning the introduction of the Time War when we were talking about Dalek. And yeah, that is kind of good. Yeah, I do like that that notion.
You know, I'm not sure, was it Dalek that introduced that? Because I think it was mentioned in The End of the World.
Oh, you're right. I think
in the very ending scene of The End of the World, where he takes Rose back to Earth and they're in a crowded street, he tells her that he's the last of his people. And
I guess it was with the Daleks. It's the first time that it was mentioned with the Daleks.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
He is right. It does give the writers the opportunity to pick and choose which parts of the show they want to say that's still part of the show or that was wiped out by the Time War. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He was also nice enough to drop us a line. He just typed a bunch of underscores, which is what I suggested in the previous episode.
That's hilarious.
So, yes, it was kind of him. I was watching Midnight. I've watched it many times before, and I was watching it in broad daylight, but I was still pretty scared of it.
Yeah, it's just so good. I think it is probably my favorite story that Russell wrote. They do so much with so little. You really get into it and emotionally involved in the story, and there's virtually no CGI. There's almost nothing to go on at all, just your imagination, which I think it's kind of a popular view that sort of is better.
Yeah, and there isn't even much of an explanation.
Right.
I mean, that's also left to your imagination.
Yeah. And it really, and the story really works without an explanation. I remember when I was first watching Waters of Mars, and I kind of wanted an explanation for why this stuff was happening, and I ultimately didn't get it. And ultimately the story wasn't even really about the Doctor sort of saving the day, because he really couldn't. But, I guess in that story, I was kind of waiting for an explanation, and here I wasn't even waiting for one. I felt like I didn't even need it for some reason.
I feel like it's scarier without it, because, I mean, we've come to expect that the Doctor's going to, through some incredible trick of cleverness, he's going to figure everything out and solve the problem. The fact that never happens, that he never figures everything out, and that he has to walk away from this not really knowing what happened, it sort of subverts your expectations for what you will see in a Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, true.
Like, I think everything about the first 10 minutes of the episode sets you up to sort of think it's going to be a sort of run-of-the-mill, bread and butter Doctor Who adventure, from when he's on the phone with Donna and he says, traveling across a barren planet called Midnight with a truck full of strangers, what could possibly go wrong? And you're like, oh, business as usual for the Doctor.
Yeah.
And then he goes in and he meets these people, and they all sort of become this group, and you're like, okay, which one's going to die first? And, like, which is how you usually sort of think in terms of these Doctor Who episodes. But then everything goes completely crazy when they start to turn on the Doctor.
That was very well done. And you could sort of, I don't know, I find it really hard to articulate this, but it's just, there's something very sort of gripping about watching the Doctor lose control. Because he usually is not necessarily completely in control, but he usually has a very good grasp of the situation. People usually do what he tells them to do, and then in this you see him just sort of drowned out by mob mentality, and it's just really, it's so good to watch. It's like so intense, and love watching it.
I think the best part of it is how his own things that he always does start to backfire on him. Like, they confront him and say, well, what's your name? And he says John Smith, which is the lie he always uses, and that just makes it worse. So him just doctoring, being the Doctor, it just makes everything worse and makes them turn on him even more. There are people who dislike the 10th Doctor, and one of the reasons they dislike him is because of his smugness. So, and I know a lot of those people appreciate this episode because his smugness completely backfires.
Yeah, I do like that. It's almost, I mean, I kind of like his smugness, and I think it sort of works. But yeah, I could see how that would get, I could see how that would get on people's nerves and how they would like this episode for that reason. And An
interesting thing about the smugness of the Doctor is that it's sort of tied into the arc of the specials.
Yeah.
Where, like, in Waters of Mars, he goes in and he starts to think of himself as this godlike figure who can do anything, and then he realizes that Adelaide is going to die anyway, and so that sort of brings him down into this dark place, which is where he is for the rest of his existence as the 10th Doctor, and he's sort of railing against it, trying to hold on because he so desperately wants to be who he is. So I feel like there's this downward spiral, and when I watch this now, which is the first time I've seen it since watching the specials, I sort of feel like this feels kind of like the beginning of that.
Yeah, I would agree, and this is, for me, also the first time I've watched this episode since then. No, yes, true. That is a true fact. I got that same feeling.
It also has, I mean, the specials have the Doctor traveling on his own, and this has the Doctor traveling on his own, so it's sort of an interesting... I don't know that I'd say it's really connected to it, but it has some parallels, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and he actually even sort of talks very briefly about traveling alone and how he has done that or how he had done that for a while. So that was kind of interesting, that he was... it's like, oh, you're going to do it again pretty soon.
If only he knew. What did you think about the Rose cameo?
I don't know. I mean, it's good for, foreshadowing, and it was kind of like, oh. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of unnecessary, but I also don't really know how it makes sense. It wasn't really explained at any point later on. I mean, like, she had the, whatever it was, dimension cannon or whatever, and she was hopping between worlds and stuff, but I don't remember a dimension TV station where you could broadcast video message. I don't know. I guess, yeah. I
mean, there was a similar thing in, was it the Sontaran two-parter?
Yes. The Monitor and the TARDIS, I think, briefly flashed an image of Rose, but the Doctor wasn't actually even in the TARDIS, if I recall. It was just Donna in there, and she didn't even say it.
I feel like at the time, when I was watching it in sequence with the rest of the episodes, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of intriguing. I wonder where this is going. But now, after the fact, when I'm going back and just trying to watch Midnight as an isolated thing in itself, it's kind of distracting.
Yeah.
Because this really interesting thing is going on. There's just been, like, this attack on the bus, and all the lights have gone out and everything, and we don't really know what's going on. The Doctor's trying to take stock of the situation. And then you see this distracting reminder of something that has nothing to do with what's going on in the story.
Yeah. I do think it is rather distracting. And actually, I showed this episode to my uncle, who used to be a fan of the classic series, I think around the time of, like, Tom Baker. And I showed it to him because I thought, this is a good self-contained story. And I didn't even really think of or remember that little sort of screen flashed with the picture of Rose. And I have to wonder what he thought of that. Just someone completely who had no idea who Rose even was, to just come in and be like, okay. I don't know. I should ask him.
Do you think he'll remember it?
No, probably not.
But what did he think about the episode overall as a fan of the classic series?
Let me think of it. He reacted positively. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he commented on David Tennant's hair, and he didn't like it. But beyond that, I don't know. He did, like I said, he did react positively, although he didn't, like, ask me for the rest of the DVDs to catch up or anything, so I guess he wasn't that enthralled.
Okay. I think, like, in some ways this story, like you said, with the special effects and the CGI being so minimal and it being completely confined, or almost completely confined to one set, this could totally have been made back in the day.
Yeah.
Except the character of it is very specific to the 10th Doctor.
True. But yeah, I mean, and I think I may have talked about this before, that I wish they had done stories like this in the classic series where they don't have to rely on, props and costumes that look bad and things like that. But, whatever.
It's one of the lessons that you get from episodes like this, and from a lot of the Stephen Moffat episodes, that like the simplest of things can become absolutely terrifying if they're deployed in the right way.
Right.
In this, it's repeating what someone else is saying. That's something any person could just do.
Right.
Although I understand that this episode was rather difficult to put together in terms of the sound design. You're not a frequent watcher of Doctor Who Confidential, are you?
Prior to this most recent series, I had never watched Doctor Who Confidential. I'm trying to sort of get into that habit because I think it lends a lot of insight into what goes on. But yeah, so I haven't seen the Doctor Who Confidential for this episode, nor any episodes from anything from before this most recent series.
I see. I'm an occasional watcher of it. I don't watch every episode, but this is one I happen to watch, and they talk a lot about sound design.
Okay. I actually had sound sort of on my mind just because I noticed a sound effect that they used, and I tend to do this. Is notice sound effects that they repeat using in various episodes. In particular, and this was just almost completely unimportant, but it was just the sound effect that they used for the intercom when the captain comes on. Is it captain? Driver? Whatever?
Driver Joe?
Yeah, Driver Joe. When he comes on and starts talking, it's the same sound effect I think that they used in Silence in the Library for the little voice thingies or whatever. And also the sound effect that they used when at the end of the 11th hour, when you've got the image of the crack on Amy's wall on the monitor in the TARDIS, and the Doctor turns the monitor off. It makes that sound, and I don't know how I can remember this, but I do. And
now that you mention it, I do think I know which sound effect you're talking about. Sort of like that.
No, kinda. I mean, I think that you did a good representation of what it would be if the human voice could duplicate it. It was close to that, sure.
It sounds like a Pokemon sound effect from one of the handheld games.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I think that you do know what I'm thinking of.
I hope I know what you think I know.
Yeah. Okay. But yes. And I don't know why. It's just, for me, I kind of like it because I actually tend to notice stock sounds a lot. Particularly when they reuse sound effects in the same series, or rather the same show. I sort of think it adds kind of a nice sort of connection. And I almost feel like it made me like the 11th hour just a little bit more. And I really liked the 11th hour, but I think I liked it a little bit more because they reused some sound effects that they used from the previous season. And for some reason, that really appealed to me. I don't know why. It just was like a nice little, this is a connection to the previous stuff. Even more so than there was a character named the Doctor and he was in a TARDIS.
I guess that's kind of cool. But, like, why would the intercom system in like a bus on the planet Midnight sound like the TARDIS display screen?
Dude, I don't know.
Like, there's no reason for it.
Well, yeah. And you know something else? The computers in Silence in the Library make a sound that is the same sound as, what do I want to say? It was a device that the Doctor had. It was either the device that he used on the bus in Planet of the Dead, or it was when in the episode of Partners in Crime? Is that what it was? The first episode of season 4? I don't know why I know this.
Wait, you mean the device he was using to
locate
whatever,
the little
adipose.
The thingies,
yeah.
The adipose, right? It was one of those, I want to say.
Huh.
Why do I know these things?
I don't know why you know these things.
But yeah, so I'm not saying it makes sense, but I also don't know if it has to.
Wow, you've got a pretty attentive ear.
I do. I don't know what's wrong with me.
So yeah, watch the episode on the sound design. Watch that Doctor Who Confidential. It may intrigue you.
I think I'm going to have to. But, like, what were they saying? Sorry, I realized I just went completely off topic, but what were they saying about the sound design?
When I cast my mind back, it's a little difficult to remember everything, but it has a lot to do with the way they sync the speech.
Oh.
I think it has to do with also the way the volume of the speech is of the mimicked speech is different at different times, depending on the perspective of the shot. in a normal episode of Doctor Who, I mean, obviously that's a consideration, but in an episode that has such a complex soundscape as this one, I mean, that's something that's got to be murder to track and do correctly.
Right.
So
yeah, I was actually thinking about that, and I was wondering how difficult that would have been to do. So I guess I'm sort of glad that they touch upon that, and I'm actually going to have to take a look at that.
Yeah, another thing is, maybe I just imagined this, but it seemed to me that as it went on, she was getting louder as well. Or maybe I was just imagining that. When she was speaking at the same time as them. When it started, she was speaking very softly, so that you were primarily hearing the other person that was speaking, the person whose words they really were, and she was sort of under that. But as the episode went on, it became more that she was speaking over them.
Yes. I would have to go back and look again, but yes, you're definitely right. When they first do it, when she first starts to do it, and you, the viewer, don't know that she's doing it yet, yes, the people who are speaking are definitely louder than her. Yeah, it does, now that I think of it, grow louder, but I have to wonder if that wasn't just something they did, sort of, like, stylistically. No, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. I wonder if that wasn't something they did from, like, kind of just a like
a practical level to create suspense,
right? Or if it was done as sort of a function of the. Words are escaping me now.
Your voice has been stolen.
I have to wonder if that's something that they did. As just a part of the, like, all right, we're going to do this so that it works, so that people hear stuff. Or I am not at all making sense right now.
Well, I do kind of understand what you're saying, though. Like
if this is how, like, the creature actually takes over, like, they start off quiet and then they get louder, or if it was just something that the episode itself did, volume wise. I don't know. That might be a really stupid thing to even think about, but I am.
Well, no. I mean, I haven't studied film much, but there's a concept of something being diegetic, which means in the world of the film, versus extra diegetic, which is like, for instance, if a character is listening to a song on a stereo, then it's diegetic music. But if it's sort of like the score, it's extra diegetic. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's kind of the same thing you're getting at, right?
Yes, this is kind of like, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but this is kind of like the flashlights in the Angels two-parter. Mm-hmm. Because I totally thought that they were, to use this fancy new word I've just learned, extra diegetic. But I don't know. Okay.
The whoosh sound, the flashlights?
The whoosh sound, yes.
That would make them kind of impractical, wouldn't it?
What?
You don't want a loud flash.
No, you don't. Which is why I assumed they were extra diegetic.
You know what's crazy? In the Lazarus experiment,
yeah,
where there's music that you totally assume is extra diegetic, but then the Doctor runs past, like, this string quartet. But then, like, he runs past and the same music continues, only it gets more suspenseful and then heightens and stuff like that. It's crazy.
I didn't notice this.
Yeah. I think it's happened more than once in Doctor Who, but that's the one that most immediately comes to mind.
That's actually really funny.
We're so ridiculously off topic right now.
Yeah, we are.
Is that all there is to say about Midnight? Because I think it probably is.
Probably. I mean, we were so horribly off topic.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could go back.
We didn't even talk that much about the episode itself, did we?
We didn't.
I mean, it was good.
It was. Well, and I think, as we've previously observed, when we don't have any real complaints, there's not a whole lot we can talk about, I guess. We can just agree that it was really awesome, and, that's about it.
Which hasn't stopped us from talking for quite a while.
That's true.
Next week, we wrap up our little... There's no name for it. Tour of the Doctors, I guess? I don't know.
Sure.
Should have come up with a name for it.
A little late now.
Yeah, you're right. There's no reason to.
But then again, in later episodes, when we're referring back to the fact that we did this, we are going to need to call it something.
Not really.
Yeah, I guess not.
It's the thing, the thing we did.
That thing we did.
Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, we will be watching an 11th Doctor story, which I guess is Amy's choice.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Huh?
I don't know. I no, I liked that episode. I would have picked something else. But I guess that's the whole point of this, is to have other people pick it.
I don't want to go too much into it, but I didn't particularly like that episode.
Right.
So maybe we can duke it out. Or something.
Sounds good.
I don't know. And then the week after that is going to be our zombie special.
Ah, yes.
Yes. I don't have we said zombie special yet on the podcast? Have we told the listeners about this yet?
I feel like we haven't.
Well,
surprise!
The premiere of The Walking Dead, a new TV show that's going to be airing on AMC in the United States, that's going to be on Halloween. And the episode after next will be the first episode that we record after Halloween, in theory. Then we also decided that we were going to talk about a Star Wars novel, which is Death Troopers, which is a zombie versus stormtrooper thing. Have you started reading that, Lewis?
No.
Me either.
Yeah.
I need to track down that book. It actually, I was thinking of buying it, and it comes out in paperback in a couple of days. We were also going to watch a zombie-themed episode of Doctor Who. And as far as I can tell, the only zombie-themed episodes of Doctor Who are The Unquiet Dead.
Okay, yeah.
And The Empty Child / The Doctor Dances.
Yeah. I would say those both qualify. Not necessarily zombies in the traditional sense, but then what is traditional about Doctor Who?
It has its own traditions.
It does. It's interesting that both of those come from the Ninth Doctor era.
Which makes him the zombie doctor.
I guess so.
Yeah, so which one of those do you think we should watch, Lewis?
You know, I've watched The Empty Child / The Doctor Dances more, so I almost want to say The Unquiet Dead just because it'll be a nice thing to do. But I don't know. Like, in terms of stuff to talk about, and certainly I don't know.
Quite ironically, that episode is Christmas themed.
Yeah.
That episode took place on, I think it was Christmas Eve.
How very interesting.
Well, let's defer this decision until next week.
Yeah.
And if our listeners have an opinion on it, I don't think we're going to do a strict voting thing. I feel like that's played out.
Yeah.
It's been done.
Yeah. Let's have them write essays. Convince us.
And then we can read them in lieu of doing a podcast.
We'll have them try and persuade us on which episode to watch.
Or if there are other zombie-themed episodes they can think of that we haven't.
Yeah.
You want to do it this time? Or say the things? You want to say the things?
Sure. But I do always forget something, so...
Well, I'll jump in and remind you if you happen to forget something. And you don't always forget something.
That's true.
That's not true. I mean, that is true. It is true that it is not true that you always forget something.
I better just do the outro.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it, Lewis.
Okay. So, all right. This does... okay, so, wait.
Is this
right,
going to be a problem?
No, I got it. Okay, here goes. Okay, so, okay, this has been the Cloister Room, and if you want to get into contact with us, you can shoot us an email. We're thecloisterroom@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, which is thecloisterroom.com, or you can follow us on Twitter @thecloisterroom, and I also have a Twitter. I'm @MilesBelly, and Tom has a Twitter.
I do, and it's @TDickinson.
And I am pretty sure I haven't forgotten anything.
If you have, then I have too.
Okay.
So, until next week,
Yeah.
I've been Tom Dickinson.
I've been Lewis Midas.
Goodbye.
Yes. That wasn't a farewell.
No.
Farewell, too.
Okay. Well. Sort of like that.